If you need help, then dial your operator.
Have no fear, fellow citizens. The Mediator is here.
Welcome back. Now it's time to get to the top 8 international headlines and developing news stories that made it this week. So let's waste no time. Wakanda forever. Let's get to it. Story number 1. The push for diversity in America has been in the news consistently and constantly. McDonald's is being sued by multiple former black franchise owners who feel they were not treated fairly by the organization. The owners say they were placed in poor neighborhoods and they were misled with false financial projections. Now, McDonald's has denied such claims in this ongoing developing story, but the key is that it's still developing. USA Today reports that thousands have signed a petition to replace a Confederate monument with Chadwick Boseman statue. Chadwick Boseman is the actor who played the Black Panther superhero in Marvel's Avengers, along with a host of other prominent characters in U.S. African American history. He's played quite a few of them. The Washington Post reports that black voters are being targeted in disinformation campaigns by Russia. The story is still developing. An article in CNBC highlights how COVID-19 has spotlighted educational inequalities in not only just in America, but the world. So that includes every ethnic group, how there may be some inequalities in education, some unfair things going on. That's why story number 1, such an interesting story. Diversity in America has been staying in the news quite a bit. Story number 2, is the media stirring the pot on racial issues? Or is racism a reality? Is it real? In less than a month, there have been numerous stories in circulation referring to the black and white issue. Now the issue, this has been followed by protests and riots in multiple states, leaving a lot of people wondering, how real is this? Is this to be taken seriously? But a lot of people are voicing their opinions about this issue. Many onlookers feel that the media could be stirring the pot on racial issues because it's election season, but some analysts are releasing key data and evidence providing proof that racism could be a real issue and could be a pretty big topic in the next election. The story is still developing. One story in Vice says that a South Carolina police officer has been suspended for the repeated use of the N-word, leaving a lot of questions inside of story number 2. Is the media hype real? I mean, you got a lot of people who have been involved in these protests, big-time celebrities, big-time politicians. So story number 2 is will probably be bumped up if it stays alive. Is racism a real issue? Is it a real concern? Is it needed to be called a public health crisis? So keep an eye on story number 2. That's why I made it in this. Story number 3. China headlines are holding steady. They keep coming in. Tensions between China and India remain a top concern after China is accusing India's soldiers of trespassing on their territory. The story is still developing. The Pentagon says that China could be looking to increase its nuclear warheads. China also now has the largest navy in the world with 350 ships and submarines compared to the United States 293. China has been spending heavily on its military compared to other nations. The big question is why? What are the Chinese preparing for? Big headline. It is still a mystery why an Australian TV anchor is being detained in China. One report in the BBC says that the 45-year-old journalist went missing, then was reported in Chinese custody. The story is still developing, but highlights that there could be something brewing, stirring the pot over in China. So keep an eye on that story. China has said has seen its weakest growth in the last 40 years. So its economy is starting to slow down. That may be why some of these stories are starting to surface. The country's mega banks lost billions of dollars in profits because of bad loans due to COVID-19. So the saga inside of story number 3, China is still staying alive. This is probably the third week that the Chinese have been in the top 8. So keep an eye on this developing story. Story number 4. Most American millennials are not happy. It's a big developing story because the 80s babies and probably the 90s and beyond still don't seem to be happy. The majority, there's probably a mixture. Older Americans may be blaming TV for younger Americans' bad habits, according to one report, especially when it comes to smoking and vaping. So there's a lot of investment that goes into child development, and some older Americans are just not happy, especially when they talk about influence when it comes to entertainment and TV. Paying off student loan debt, along with the other dream of owning property and having a nice home and making it big, is slowly starting to fade from America's younger generation, according to a report. So the list of accomplishments seem to be dwindling when it comes to the younger generation, and COVID-19 may have just made it worse. Well, those are our top 4 stories that made it in international headlines and developing news stories that made it. I'll be back with the top 4 international headlines and developing news stories that made this week. So don't go anywhere. You're in the Mediator with me, Brian West. I'll be right back. If you want to check out the stories that almost made it in or did make it in, go to our Twitter feed on our website. Check out everything. All of the sources are there. And go to the website. It's method8inc.com. Method8inc.com, where you can buy something, click on something, watch something, read something, or just sponsor a program. Welcome back. Now it's time to get to the top 4 international headlines and developing news stories that made it this week. So let's waste no time. Let's get to it. Story number 5. Protests, riots, and healthcare stories have dominated recent headlines. There are a lot of questions centering around the Black Lives Matter movement and Antifa-led riots and protests. The movement has gained global attention, but spectators are still not clear on why some activists in these groups have used violence to disrupt peaceful protests. This story is still developing. California is set to be the first state to require its healthcare facilities to have a 45-day supply of PPE on hand in case of an emergency. That's emergency equipment. A woman who has a breathing hole in her neck was kicked out of a bingo hall for not wearing a face mask. That's pretty sad. And another headline, a Disney World police officer was assaulted for enforcing a mask policy at the park, showing a lot of things happening in the mask arena. After being denied entry, an intoxicated man was cited for blocking the entrance of a Papa John's restaurant because he was told he couldn't be served without a mask. So there's a lot going on with these masks. People just don't want to wear them. And sometimes you forget them and you get to the store, they say you can't eat, and the store doesn't have one on hand. So my advice is that if they want to keep customer service and to keep good customers, please have a supply inside the store. That's a big talking point. The feds to provide over 100 million testing kits to schools for this year. One headline claims that the Trump strategy to defeat COVID-19 may be herd immunity, what herd immunity is they want to let the virus spread to build up the population's resistance to the virus, while also instead of protecting them, but protecting the weak while everybody else becomes immune. So that's what herd immunity, some reference to it, but that's why this story made it this week. After organizing a Black Lives Matter protest, for affordable housing for black people and Native Americans and other people of color in New Jersey. The teen who organized the protest was billed about $2,500 to cover the bill for police overtime to cover the protest. So they're basically saying, like, if you're going to start some stuff, at least pay the bills. So this has been going on in a lot of different circles as people are just getting very, very tired. And that's why story number 5 is such a big headline. It has a lot to do with what's happening inside these communities. U.S. passes 6 million COVID-19 cases. So a lot of people are still catching the virus. 2 police officers dead in Chicago after another weekend of violence, leaving 10 dead and 45 wounded. And another headline that made it to story number 5. 175 people arrested in Kenosha, Wisconsin. 102 of the people that were arrested apparently lived outside of the city. So keep an eye on story number 5. It doesn't seem to be going anywhere anytime soon as the protests, the riots, and the confusion, not only in that, but in healthcare continues. Story number 5, big headline. That's why I made it in this video. Story number 6, is there a case against career politicians? That means, should they be in that long? Do you need some new blood in Congress? With power comes great responsibility, according to Spider-Man, but there have been numerous stories circulating about politicians saying one thing and doing another. They're only human, but the list is long. Here's just a few. The most recent, after a city ban on dining indoors, a Philadelphia mayor was reportedly spotted dining indoors in Maryland. The mayor has apologized for being hypocritical. Another one, Joe Biden's campaign took in $300 million as the push to unseat Trump may be gaining momentum. Here's another one. Nancy Pelosi made headlines for apparently getting her hair done after she defied state orders in the midst of COVID-19. So the state was saying that people are not allowed to do certain things, but Nancy went in there, got her hair done. So keep an eye on story number 6. It's showing you what is actually happening in the political arena. They're only human, but a lot of people are still there. They still have a lot of pressure on them to not only get their hair done, but to go out and eat when other people can't eat. But if they're enforcing the law, I think people expect them to follow it. But just keep an eye on story number 6. It's one of those stories that keeps lingering around. Twitter removes Trump's tweet about false information about COVID-19 deaths. The company has also had to remove false tweets from the president in the past. So that's why the story keeps developing. Kanye West may be breaking some campaign finance laws by not telling who his GOP backers are. Story number 6 is one of those stories that highlights the position of power and how there's a lot of pressure when you're in those seats. But a lot of people are getting very tired of career politicians. They're saying that they make enough to feed themselves for 2 lifetimes while average Americans are suffering. And that's why I made it almost in the top 2 this week, especially around election season. Story number 7 in the top 2 international headlines and developing news stories that made it in this week. Do teachers have a reason to strike because of COVID-19? New York City has the nation's largest school systems, but will be delaying the start of the school year until September 21st to avoid a teacher strike. Safety, preparation, and teacher health remain a top concern. The safety and health of the children remain a top concern also. But that leaves the question is, do teachers have a right to strike like healthcare workers just in case they're not, they don't go back to a safe classroom? This is a big developing story as this COVID-19 saga continues and people continue to get disease. Some people just try to stay away from it. That's why story number 7 made it to the top 2 this week. All eyes are on the school system as we continue on in the next school year. Story number 8 in the top international headline and developing news story that made it in this week. 9 months into COVID-19, the saga continues and the bills still have to be paid. The number of homeless and poor people have been hitting new highs. Although the Trump administration has announced a nationwide eviction moratorium set to last until the end of the year, some still don't think or don't feel that it's enough. Stories of more government relief programs have been have had people on the edge of their seat, hoping and waiting for some more help, especially as some of these benefits are starting to dwindle away. One article in Vox says that the Trump administration is failing to protect struggling Americans from predatory lending as well. That's high interest rates loans, payday loans, all those other types of loans with high interest rates that promise you can pay them back, but some people can't even afford to pay the bills, so they desperate measures, they go take out these loans and they can't keep up. So that's why story number 8 is such a big headline. Claims may be on the decline, but 1 million have applied for unemployment assistance as the COVID-19 saga continues. Story number 8 is one of those stories that you have to keep an eye on because it deals with the finances and how people are surviving, especially when it comes to paying the bills inside of the COVID-19 battles. Keep an eye on story number 8. Well, those are our top headlines of developing news stories that made it this week, local and international. As usual, I'd like to thank all the news outlets, the media, the people on the front lines. You deserve all the credit. I'm just a mediator. If you want to show us some support, go to the website on the screen. It doesn't take much. All you have to do is buy something, click on something, watch something, read something, or just sponsor a program. Well, I'm going to take a break, come back next week, read through over 200 or more stories to keep you informed. That's the goal. And so I'm going to head out of here, take a break, and come back and do it all over again next week. I want to thank you so much for tuning in this week. Thank you for tuning to The Mediator with me, Brian West. Have a good week, everybody. Peace.
If you need help, then dial your operator.
Have no fear, fellow citizens. The Mediator is here.